this is Napeta. Napeta Walker's Low. So I'm going to repeat everything I said, right? We have it in a few different parts of the park, and that happens with most of our plants. We have them planted in different beds, so it creates unity and integrity in the design. It's been blooming for a couple weeks now, and in this bed, it's in full bloom. It's a very hardy plant. You know, it's quite common in New York City parks. It tolerates urban conditions very well. Even if they get trampled a little bit, they will come back. It's a very easy plant to work with. Later on in the season, when the bloom starts fading, and it blooms for a long time, by the way, and when the bloom starts fading, I shear them back, and it goes back to the original, more rounded form, and then it blooms again. Not quite prolific as it is now, but it does bloom again. And I like to cut it back, not in the fall, but in late winter. I leave it for winter interest, and then in late winter, I cut it back pretty hard, down to 8 inches off the ground. And that makes a more compact plant too. It does tend to sprawl. It doesn't self-seed. This variety is sterile, so we're not self-seeding the garden, but it does form big clumps over time, which can be easily divided in spring. So, and together with the Nepeta here, we have the allium, and it's been such a hit in the park. We planted so many last fall. It's the largest, this allium, the round white lobes. It's the tallest white allium there is. It's hardy. It's a bulbous perennial, so it comes from a bulb. It's garlic, really. That's what the Latin names means, and it's not edible, but it stays in the landscape, and it increases in size, like it expands. It can self-seed. Now, and it came out really wonderfully. That's really magical, and we have it in a few different beds in the park too. And it's really been a hit. And everybody comments. It's really nice. And of course, people can't resist, so they pluck some of it, which is not nice.
I'm gonna see if that helps the sound a little bit. And we'll move on to our next plant.
Of
And it looks like our headset isn't working, so we're gonna just switch to a single stream. Guy and I will take you together, and we'll try to get that sound working again. Again, apologies for that. Okay.
All right.
Guy, where are we heading next?
Now we're going to Holly Plaza. We're gonna look at a shrub.
Shrubs. We love shrubs. And as you can see, it's a beautiful day here in Washington Square Park. Sun is shining. The fountain looks beautiful. Lots of NYU students celebrating their graduation.
We've planted in the past 3 years, we've planted close to 150,000 bulbs. 150,000. And that's daffodils, allium, the garlic plant we're just looking at. What else did we plant? Wild tulips, crocus, anemone. And it's very gratifying to see all of it coming up, despite all the usage that we get in the park. You know, it's very gratifying to make it look this beautiful.
Guy, how do you decide what to plant?
All right, there are a few factors there. There is the original design, right, that I keep going back to. We try different plants. We want plants that can take the conditions, that they are kind of easy to maintain, because we are three. It's Tyson, Dwayne, and I. There are three full-time gardeners, and we have to choose plants that are somewhat easier to maintain because we just can't give them that much of attention. So we look at that. We've been planting coral bells, Heuchera autumn bride, that was planted in the past, and we noticed that it does like the park really well. So we're insisting on planting more of that, just because it works. It just works really well.
Great. Where are we heading now?
Right here.
Here in Holly Plaza.
And then to the left and to the right, and behind, it's a dogwood. It's Cornus cruza.
Here, let's get close. We'll get a nice close up for you.
It's very similar to the Cornus florida, which finished blooming maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. This one it's not the native one. It differs from the Cornus florida in several ways. One is the time of bloom. Also, what you see here is not really the flower. The flowers in here, these are the multiple flowers in there, but these are modified leaves that look like petals. But technically, this is not a petal, right? It's a bract or a modified leaf. It's quite showy, very, very showy. The buds are also different. That's tell them apart before either one is blooming. This Cornus cruza has more candle-like flower buds, whereas the Cornus florida has more of an onion. It's rounder, the flower buds, so that's a way to tell them apart when they are not in bloom. And we have them here in this location, and we have them also closer to the southeast entrance of the park.
Great. Where next?
Now to the small playground.
Wave to your fans, Guy.
It's a gorgeous day. It's really gorgeous. And I'm talking to you and I'm listening to the jazz band playing. Yeah, it's really spectacular.
Little live music for you. I'll point it out as we pass it. It's not part of our walk necessarily, but that green sign on that tree there says it's okay to hug me. The Parks Department is encouraging people to hug trees. It is good for your soul. So go ahead, and if you see a tree with one of those signs on it, you go ahead and hug it. Give it a nice squeeze.
And here again, we have more of the allium. So when I started here, there were some of them. So that's answering your question again. I worked off what was here already. So I saw that it did well here. So I've been expanding. Soon I have to split some of these clumps. They're getting very crowded. So I'll split it and spread it in this bed. And we have it. We have alliums growing in this bed and all 4 beds next to the arch. And that again, it's to create that unity, it's to create continuity in the design, it's to tie everything together. And it's a lot of fun to play with, bring these plants in and plant more and see it all come up.
Do you have a favorite plant?
I don't. Like it's all of the.
It's like asking a parent if they have a favorite child.
Yeah, no, they can hear you. So well, like this spring, but this is awesome. You have the Napeta here, it's doing really well. And then you have just because the allium foliage, when it starts looking raggedy, right? It just, it starts falling apart, and then it gets covered by other perennials. And the bees here, I don't know if you can see, the bees are just going crazy.
I'll try to get close. So there's a bee here on an allium. So this is allium here. You can see that bee is loving it, having a great time. And then down here is more of the Nepeta that we saw before, which is also a big a bee attractor.
And this is one of the plants that I've been planting more. It's not, it blooms, it flowers, but the flowers are not very showy, flowers later on. But the foliage to me it's the great thing here. It's very tropical looking. It's a very good ground cover. It suppresses the weeds really well. Self seeds, you find it in very unexpected places.
It's a beautiful color.
Yeah,
bright green.
Yes, it's called Autumn Bride, Microphylla Autumn Bride, and it's just great. It works for us really, really well because it spreads. It's easy to divide. Yes,
can you repeat the name of the ground cover here?
This one, Heuchera, Heuchera, Heuchera. Autumn Bride. That's
Autumn Bride. What a lovely name. Yeah. Heuchera Autumn Bride.
All right, some more flowering shrubs. This is the Viburnum.
Here, Viburnum.
Viburnum Tatum tomentosum. Double file Viburnum. It's a very long name. It just started blooming maybe a few days ago. It starts slow, right? And then it just bursts into color. It's a very easy shrub to work with. It can be, if it grows out of proportion, it can be cut back after it flowers. Because if I were to cut it before it flowered, I would be cutting flower buds, right? So a shrub like this that blooms on old growths, on the wood that's grown in the previous season, if I were to cut it before, I would be cutting all the flower buds. So if I need to do any pruning here, which I don't, but if I were to, I would be able to do right after it's done flowering.
When does it finish flowering usually?
In a little bit now, maybe a couple of weeks.
Oh, that's a long time. It lasts a few weeks.
Yes. And it dies down, and then you have a random bloom here, there.
And this is another one. Yeah, these are more of them here. So it's that same shrub.
And this doesn't get much taller than this. This is how tall you get.
It's beautiful. Does it come in other colors or just the white?
No, not unless there is a variety that I'm not aware of. There might be. There might be a different color for the variety, but I can't think of one now. It's a very pure white snow. It's a very interesting plant. And I love the staggered, stratified, it's called, branching effect that it does. Right? It doesn't reach out very far, but you have this layered branching pattern. And the next shrub is right next to it. So it's Tyrex Japonicus, Japanese snowball, which has a similar growth pattern. Also, there's the staggered branching effect. It's a small tree. Will grow up to 20 feet. It's a very good tree for small gardens, city backyards. Doesn't grow very tall. Doesn't spread very wide.
Does it need a lot of sun?
It can grow in sun, but if it's grown in sun, it needs extra moisture. Right, so it's a part shade. It will grow in shade, but it won't bloom as much. That's the rule for a lot of plants. Like they may grow in shade, but they won't bloom very well. Tyrex Japonicus. And now our last plant that I have on the list. Before I go there, so another interesting, because we live in the now, right? In gardening, what's blooming now and what's about to bloom. So we have the hydrangeas here. This is a hydrangea Microphylla, large leaf hydrangea. And these are the flower buds. Right? They're going to open later on. And here is an example of having that multi-season effect, right? So when the viburnums die down, when the Tyrex dies down, and then the hydrangeas pick up.
The hydrangea leaf, the flower on the hydrangea looks a little similar in shape to the other shrub that we were just looking at.
The viburnum, it does. Now, it's very easy to confuse them. There are hydrangeas that look even more than these hydrangeas here. There are hydrangeas, lace-capped hydrangeas, look very much like a viburnum, but it's the time of blooming that tells them apart. Viburnums are earlier. They bloom in spring, whereas the hydrangeas, they bloom later on. They bloom in the summer. Early summer.
So again, there's the hydrangea that has not yet bloomed, and then the viburnum that looks sort of like it, but it's an earlier bloomer, and that's how we can tell the difference. All right, Guy, where are we going?
Now we're gonna find a rhododendron.
Ooh, the rhododendrons. Those are showstoppers right now.
We can go to the University Place entrance. There's a really nice person in there. So the azaleas are done blooming.
How many months out of the year are there things blooming here, do you think?
Until November. Well, you get something in December if the weather is okay. Actually, no, the hellebores will bloom in December. So we're talking about January. It's January, really, and February.
So really, like 10 months out of the year, there is something blooming here.
Yes. If you get a heavy snow, you won't see the hellebores flowers, right? Because they'll just be covered.
And
but if it's a mild winter,
I'm going to show again. Here's more of that Nepeta that we've been seeing around the park, and more of those alliums. They remind me of something from Dr. Seuss.
Oh, and here, now that we're passing by, these white flowers here, they're called Star of Bethlehem, or the Togolum chrysanthemum, I believe. The common name is Star of Bethlehem. Here we started, maybe 2017, the fall of 2000. We started a style of planting here called spins, which is a drift of naturalizing bulbs. And naturalizing bulbs are bulbs that we plant and we leave them and we let them spread. They either clump up and just become wider over time, or they self-seed. And this particular drift, it starts with the crocus. And then it goes into anemones and daffodils. And then there are some wild tulips. And now we have the Star of Bethlehem blooming. And it's already self-seeded in other places in the park. This is the first place where we planted them. And now they are in other places.
Do they spread? How do they spread? Does it just blow in the wind, or is it the birds carrying it?
I believe it's the wind. I'm not completely sure about the Star of Bethlehem, but so for a plant to be that successful, it's probably more than one actually. It's probably, there's the wind, and then maybe, I know that ants carry seeds around.
Ants?
It could be that. It could be that case for the Star of Bethlehem. A good question. Look into it. Oh, and I can see more of the allium already.
Yes, the allium, very easy to spot in this park. It is very tall, and it pops itself up in the middle of everything.
Look how awesome. Next to the deodar cedars. Look how, it's so gorgeous.
Yes, some of you might remember those deodar cedars from our tree walk back in, I think it was end of the season last year.
And we have another bulb blooming here. That's another naturalizing bulb, Camassia. It's native to the Pacific Northwest. There you go.
That's the Camassia.
Wild hyacinth.
Wild hyacinth. Hyacinths are one of my favorite flowers.
And it's maybe the second season in this bed that we spent on here.
So we're over here, very near the northeast corner.
And this is a Cornus Florida. It's done blooming. Right?
So
Now
similar to the dogwood that we saw in the other area in Holly, but a different variety of it. So it's bloomed earlier and it's done now.
And it's grows like the other Cornus.
So that's like the center flower,
Yes.
center of what those flowers that are actually leaves was.
Yes, and the Cornus Florida has very rounded bracts, the modified leaves. And the Cornus Cruz has very pointy. It's another way to tell them apart. All right, and here's one. We passed a few rhododendrons, but that one is doing really, really well. Right at the end.
And as we finish with our rhododendron, I know you've been putting some questions in as we go, but if you have any other questions for Guy, feel free to type them into the chat and we will answer those for you before we call an end to this. So we're getting up here. And here it is. Like I said, a showstopper.
Rhododendron Kottabiensi, the Catawba rhododendron. We have it in many different places in the park. It is a native shrub, evergreen, which is very interesting. And it flowers and sends new foliage at the same time, which I find it interesting. So you have the young foliage coming up right here, and then the flowers.
And that's not very common for plants.
No, it's either or. And a lot of the early bloomers bloom even before the leaves set out. I think the red buds, Cercis canadensis, that's Amelanchier, those bloom before the leaves come out. And then later on, like the Cornus scusa, they already have the foliage and then you have the flower. But with this guy, they're coming out at the same time. And it's evergreen. It's rhododendron free, somewhat easy to grow. Most of the problem usually starts with soggy soils. It does not like that. It has to be good drainage or you'll get some roots disease. And it'll just decline. It's a very hardy plant. It does not like to be exposed to wind too much, so you can get a lot of winter injury. When you buy, it's a container-grown plant. You can grow it in a container, but the roots are so fibrous and they're so vigorous that if you are to growing it in a container from time to time, we're talking about years, 2 years, maybe 3 years, you have to do a root pruning because the roots get so dense in the pot, in the container, that it's hard for it to hold on to water. So every so often you have to remove the plant, cut the roots, and to put the plant right back into the original container.
Great. All right, and I'm actually going to ask my own question before we go because I've had this question when I walk in this entrance. I love these little flowers here. These tiny, tiny little blue flowers, purpley flowers. What are these, Guy?
That's Brunra.
Brunra?
Brunra, yeah, Brunra. It looks like a forget-me-not.
It does.
Right? It's a Brunra. This one is Brunra Microphylla Jack Frost.
Jack Frost.
I believe it's the variety.
What first caught my eye was the leaves. They're just
Isn't it gorgeous?
Beautiful leaves.
Yeah, and that's another choice that even after the flowers are done, the foliage is there, and the foliage is really stunning. So it stays. The interest stays there. It dies back in the winter, right? It's not evergreen. It's deciduous, so it dies back and it comes up, and it's beautiful. When they are unfurling, they are really spectacular. They kind of cluster like that, and then they just open up.
Beautiful. All right. Well, if we'll give it a minute if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, Guy and I will say thank you. We appreciate your patience as we figure out the sound here in the park. You know, it's never goes quite to plan, but we hope you enjoyed it. And we'll send out a notice about the next time we do one of these lunchtime lectures. We're back at it now that the season started up again. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.